The intersection of East North and North 7th Streets are as unassuming as nearly any other intersection in Wytheville. A century ago, an imposing iron gate once distinguished this spot. Behind it, a brick walkway led up the hill to the equally imposing Villa Maria Academy, a Catholic boarding school and convent operated by the Order of the Sisters of the Visitation. Villa Maria's roots trace much deeper than Wytheville. The centuries-old Order of the Visitation was operating several boarding schools in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States by the mid-19th century. The Catholic Diocese of Wheeling was first approached with the proposition of establishing a school in Southwest Virginia in the years immediately following the American Civil War. The chief architects of this proposition were Virginia Senator John Warfield Johnston and former Confederate General Robert E. Lee, both of whom sought a means of providing a genteel education to women of the Southern landowning elite who found themselves impoverished as a consequence of the war. In the summer of 1867, the diocese dispatched Mother Superior Mary Borgia and 6 other nuns from the Mount de Chantal Academy in Wheeling to the newly opened Villa Maria Academy in Abingdon. The sisters were tasked with operating the convent and the adjacent academy, which graduated its first class 2 years later in 1869. By the turn of the 20th century, the convent in Abingdon had become dilapidated and unfit for purpose. Instead of renovating the building, the diocese instead chose to relocate the institution to Wytheville, which at that time was more populous than Abingdon and was better connected by both road and rail networks. The diocese purchased a 2-story brick house and an adjoining 18 acres on what was then the edge of town. The modest brick house was significantly expanded to include east and west wings and a belfry, and was refaced in a brick Romanesque facade. Gardens, a working farm, and lush vegetation were also added to the complex, along with walking trails leading to a pond fed by a natural spring. The newly chartered Villa Maria Academy opened its first session in September 1902. The building itself boasted the modern wonders of electricity, telephones, steam heat, and indoor plumbing. The curriculum, too, was notably progressive for its time. While the Order of the Visitation still stressed the virtues of humility and obedience in their teaching, their academic courses also prepared young girls for social and business careers in a world that was rapidly changing. The West Wing, with its turret, housed a music room and study rooms on the first floor, classrooms on the second, and a dormitory on the third floor. The East Wing was home to a convent for sisters who chose to pursue a monastic life praying in seclusion. The respective worlds in the 2 wings rarely intersected with each other in any place besides the chapel, which sat directly in between the 2 wings on the building's north face. Weekday Mass was said here instead of at St. Mary's Catholic Church, as the convent's chapel was larger. Enrollment was typically limited to 40 students, who were expected to abide by a number of rules including, but not limited to, presentation. Navy uniforms distinguished the younger girls from those above the age of 13, who were given uniforms of black skirts, white blouses, and ties. Students from a variety of faiths attended both the boarding school and the day school, although non-Catholics were excused from catechism and courses related to church doctrine. Villa Maria offered its boarding and day students an amalgam of courses. The preparatory and junior departments focused on basic education. Intermediate ages were instructed in basic literature, math and sciences, as well as French, German, and Latin, typewriting, stenography, elocution, drawing, and wood carving. Senior pupils engaged in more advanced courses, including metaphysics, astronomy, logic, physiology, botany, and geography. Despite this broad curriculum, the Academy was best known for its focus on music, art, and French, as these were the skills that, in an earlier time, generally made middle and upper-class women marketable to prospective husbands. Simpler courses like needlework started at $12, while more advanced courses like voice lessons ranged as high as $60. Yearly tuition was $160, and an additional $60 for those who chose to remain for the Academy's summer session. The sisters exercised the Academy's expertise in music by hosting dramas and recitals on an almost monthly basis. Regular social events, including student bazaars, poetry readings, dances, and even a haunted Halloween forest arranged on the school's grounds, dotted the calendar each year. Villa Maria became an educational institution revered across the East Coast during its early decades in Wytheville, hosting students across class barriers from Appalachia, the Deep South, and even well north of the Mason-Dixon line. On the afternoon of March 10, 1920, smoke was seen issuing from the eaves of the convent's roof. A faulty electrical wire in a fourth-floor closet had set the building's attic ablaze. A strong northwest wind had fanned the flames beyond the point of control by the time Wytheville's fire department arrived on the scene. Firefighters and local citizens instead devoted precious time to evacuating as many of the building's contents as possible. Their Herculean effort saved an ocean of steamer trunks containing the sisters' and students' personal possessions, an array of statuary, artwork, and draperies, and not least of all, 9 enormous pianos. 2 hours after the fire was first detected, Villa Maria had been reduced to a ruin. Fortunately, none of the 30 sisters or their 60 pupils were harmed in the blaze, although they were suddenly left homeless. Generous townsfolk opened their doors to them, and the school itself was relocated to quarters in the old parish rectory for the time being. Insured at a mere fraction of its value, the diocese was uncertain whether it would be possible to rebuild the convent. Ultimately, an effort prevailed, and a new, albeit somewhat less grand, 70-room wood-frame structure was rebuilt on the same site to house the Academy and the sisters. The school reopened in time for the 1923 fall session and continued its reputation of excellence. In fact, the 1926-27 school year was a record year for attendance, when the register reflected some 61 pupils. By the early 1940s, however, the order could no longer provide enough sisters to staff the boarding school, which ultimately closed its doors in 1944. The day school continued for a brief time after this. However, the remaining sisters were soon dispatched to convents in Wheeling, Richmond, and Baltimore. The convent itself was converted to an apartment house after it was sold in 1945. Half of the building was destroyed by fire in February 1952, displacing many of the 15 families who called it home. Curiously, the source of the fire was found to be a faulty electrical wire in a fourth-floor closet, the exact same cause of the fire which destroyed the first convent on this site almost exactly 32 years earlier. The remaining half of the building was repaired and continued to be used for apartments until 1970, and was demolished in 1975. The 2 rows of townhouses that now occupy this lot were built the following year. The only surviving physical reminders on this site of Villa Maria Academy are the 2 towering pine trees that once framed its entrance. Another remnant of the Academy sits just 4 blocks away from East North Street. A number of sisters who lived and worked at Villa Maria also died there and were buried in the adjacent convent cemetery. After Villa Maria's closure, their graves were exhumed and relocated to the Catholic cemetery, where they can be found today. This was once the churchyard which adjoined the old St. Mary's Catholic Church. When it was built in 1844, it was nicknamed the Cathedral in the Wilderness, as it was the only Catholic parish between Lynchburg, Virginia, and Knoxville, Tennessee. Directly to the right of what was once a dirt road that led to the old church stands a grotto with a statue of the Virgin Mary, marking the sisters' final resting place. Among those buried here are Mother Superior Mary Borgia, who was instrumental in establishing the first Villa Maria Academy in Abingdon in 1867, and who directed the convent's relocation to Wytheville in 1902. Sister Mary Agnes Broughton, who left her wealthy family in Baltimore for the religious life, was known for her gift of music and her operatic voice, and was superior for 18 years before her death in 1942. Sister Mary Fidelis Dill instructed art at both academies in Abingdon and Wytheville, and cared for the sisters and the pupils' wardrobes until her death in the 1940s. Sister Mary Aloysius Mears was assistant superior and business manager until her death at the age of 94. Like many of the sisters, she spent many decades at Villa Maria, having served at both academies in Abingdon and Wytheville. Among their names on the grotto's tablet are a number of other sisters, whose own legacies have been lost in time. The grotto itself is of no less historical significance. It has stood in the garden of Villa Maria in Abingdon, its successor in Wytheville, and ultimately here in the Catholic cemetery for nearly 160 years. Not far away is the grave of Senator John Warfield Johnston, without whose influence in the 1860s, Villa Maria would never have been established.